Hey y'all, today we are in for a special treat. Somebody who's been covering the game for 43 years, somebody that I've been looking up to and have had 43 years. He's been covering all of this about a decade longer than I've been alive. So
It hurt. It hurt.
The infamous, legendary D Gunn stops in Milwaukee, San Diego, and let me make sure.
Pittsburgh.
El
Centro, California. Oh man, I've been all over.
I don't even know where that's at, Derrick. Where's El Centro?
You don't need to know, man. It's a safe haven that I can retreat to just in case of emergency.
Oh, nice.
Nice. It's like in the middle of Southern California, way down near the border. It's between Yuma, Arizona, which is right on the Arizona border. It's about a 55-minute drive to Yuma, Arizona, and it's about an hour and 40-minute drive going the other way to San Diego. It's a desert region where it starts getting in the 80s and 90s in March, and by summer, it's the exact same weather as Phoenix. When you look at Phoenix on the national weather map, temperature 113, 114. That is where my wife is from. There's like 11 little towns in this Imperial Valley where she's from that sits 45 feet below sea level. As a matter of fact, her hometown is right on the border of Mexico, where I could walk from her family's house and be in Mexicali, Mexico in less than 15 minutes. I can walk to the border. Yeah. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
But with climate change and all that, that's a little scary.
Well, see, but I like it because it's a dry desert heat. It's hot.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not that blanketed humidity like you see on the East Coast and down in Florida. If you had that kind of humidity out there, man, people be dropping like flies. But it's a dry heat, it's breathable, and a lot of people move to like Arizona and Southern California for health reasons and for what they consider a better style of living. So, I love hot weather to begin with, and that kind of heat doesn't bother me. Florida, my wife she's never going to Florida, so we forget that.
Savannah, Georgia, with all those mosquitoes, it's ridiculous.
Hey man, when you go down to places like Alabama and Georgia, you got mosquitoes that are so big when they tap you on your arm looking for your vein. You got to get up out of that state, man. Those are big mosquitoes down there.
The little, pointer things, like,
injection
3
needles,
inches
man.
long.
Yeah, man. Those like syringe. Them little pointers on their faces like syringe needles, man. They ain't joking, man. And they tell you. And when you slap them like this, like see up here on the East Coast, when you slap a mosquito, you smash them. Down there, you slap them. They just look at you like, that's all you got?
Yeah. Seriously. You
only make them mad down there. Yeah. You got to bring something, man. You better have something in your pocket. Loaded, ready to shoot the mosquitoes down there, bro. I ain't, joking. Down there, the South, woo. I'm telling you, man. I don't fool around down there.
And it could be 80 degrees, but you could be drenched in like Savannah, Georgia, Florida.
Yes.
It's like 20 degrees hotter than what the temperature says.
See, I don't mind, but I don't mind that kind of heat. But my wife said we're never moving there, so I just given up that dream. It's like BB King said, the thrill is gone. So I, wherever I wanted to move down further south, it's not going to happen. It's got to be back out towards west. So,
whenever your guy BG takes off, y'all go into the sunset together.
No, heck no, man. I'm getting as far away from him as possible. I already told him, man, wherever I go, you're not allowed to enter that state, as long as I'm out there, man. No, that's my boy, but we joke all the time. But yeah, man.
Absolutely.
The cost of living is so astronomical out there now that I told my wife, I said, that's just a pipe dream now. We can forget that. You can't even afford an Adobe hut out there. So we're
and then
stuck
the $10 gas.
Hey, look, California ain't no joke, man. Property taxes, cost of living, gas rates. Now, I don't understand how a lot of people do it because most of the people in that state are not making that kind of money, but somehow they survive. You can adapt to anything, but I mean, it's like, my goodness, you need 3 jobs just to be middle class out there. It's crazy, man.
Especially these days. So
yeah.
So the latest news overnight for the Birds is that they went and got all these years later, it was a pipe dream. Everybody was excited. Number 2, Marcus Mariota, and all these years later, after a so-so season in Atlanta, they bring him here to Philadelphia to back up Jalen Hurts. I mean, did you kind of see anything like this coming? And how do you feel about the move?
Well, once Minshew signed with Shane Steichen in Indianapolis, you knew they were going to need a number 2 quarterback. And when you looked at the list of free agent quarterbacks out there, it's a very unappealing list overall. So I would have to start by saying bringing in a Marcus Mariota, it was the best of what's available. And
Sure.
You're hoping he still has something left in the tank. You look at his career, the 2nd overall pick by Tennessee, and you thought he was going to be the next great one. And you look at his 2nd year in the league, I mean, he was ascending in the right direction. 26 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions. And then all of a sudden he does a complete 360 the next year, 13 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and his career has been downhill ever since. Whatever the case may be, he didn't flourish in Tennessee. You thought that he was going to go down to Atlanta and reinvent himself. Yep. He showed, small smidgens of promises, but it never kind of leveled itself. And let's face it, Atlanta was devoid of talent in a lot of ways, which makes it that much more difficult. But I do think he has the athleticism and the arm to flourish in a Nick Sirianni offense. Now, obviously, with Jalen Hurts in front of him, his chances of playing are going to be very slim. But when you're a team like the Eagles that came within 3 points of winning the Super Bowl, and you were able to bring back a lot of your defensive players and your future Hall of Fame center in a conference that is wide open. I've never seen the NFC as wide open as it has been just this past year and moving forward, especially if Aaron Rodgers is headed to the Jets. The Eagles are in prime position to get back to that Super Bowl again. So kudos to Howie Roseman for loading up with depth, not just any kind of depth to save a buck, but quality depth that can keep the machine rolling if the starters fall by the wayside.
Yeah, it's a 1-year, $5 million deal. In the case where, this team has already won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. And so, right. This team, I love how they manage that, because a lot of teams, say for instance, a team from the Bay Area, they end up at the end of the year, not even dressing a Jimmy Garoppolo, and then they feel cheated out of a Super Bowl. I mean, they were cheated by their management. If you don't dress a quality quarterback in the biggest game of the year, how can you be mad at anybody, other than yourself? Because in my recollection, D-Gun, you get to keep your ear closer to the street than me, but it sounded like, just to go back a little bit, Jimmy Garoppolo was a healthy scratch for the NFC Championship. Am I correct?
It was borderline. They were teetering back and forth. Would he be ready? And then in the final analysis, they didn't want to take a risk. I mean, they talked about he could be healthy enough to play, but obviously the training staff and the doctors felt, okay, he's okay, but let's not push it. And luckily, for him, they didn't push it, because you look at the situation he's in now, which is a great situation. You just, what if he had gotten in that game against the Eagles and gotten hurt, which could have hurt him this offseason in terms of not being able to get the money that he got. So as much as the Niners needed a quarterback in one of the strangest games I've ever seen, much to his benefit, the Niners made the best decision possible for him, not putting him in that game.
Yeah, from that perspective, they were doing him a solid. It was more for.
Oh my goodness, man! The Eagles knocking quarterbacks out left and right in that game, man. They were running a wishbone at one point, dude. I'm like, I haven't seen a wishbone in decades, man. Golly.
With McCaffrey missing guys by 20 yards on deep post patterns.
Christian say, man, I just signed up for this. But you got to do what you got to do to save face. And unfortunately for the 49ers, they were in a gunfight with a cap gun at that point.
That's right. So, water pistol.
Yeah, man. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens to them. They're a loaded team on defense, the Niners are, but they've got questions on quarterback now, a quarterback situation now. So we'll see exactly how that plays out.
So back to Derrick Gunn, that you always mess with each other and got a great banter, just like you and Barrett Brooks. So if he plays 11 more games now with the new deal we got here in Philly, if he plays 11 more games, he'll be the franchise. He'll have played the most games in franchise history. Do you think that this season that the team envisions him more, leaning more into the D tackle role, third down D tackle in that race car 4DN kind of packages, or are we going to see Derrick, Brandon Graham doing what he does, what we've seen him do now for 14 seasons?
Yeah. No, I think, he will continue to play the same kind of role that he's already played.
Okay.
I think he played like 38% of the snaps. And they're going to move him around,
Okay.
and when it's like a passing situation, like you see a lot of teams do this now. They want to get their best pass rushers on the field, so they'll take a DN and move them into the tackle spot. You can see him do that occasionally, but primarily he'll be coming from the edge. They'll move him from side to side, trying to gain the best advantage possible. Brandon Graham is very secure in where he is right now, and he told us on our show Sports Take back in May that if his role was reduced, he's fine with that. He just wanted another chance to win another ring, and lo and behold, he got that chance. Unfortunately, they ran into that Kansas City team with that dude, that magic man named Mahomes,
Yep.
And Andy Reid. Andy Reid outcoached Jonathan Gannon in that second half, completely outcoached him. So Brandon Graham's role is what it is. He's comfortable with that. Even though they have a new defensive coordinator, I don't see his role changing much at all.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. At 38% of the snaps is reasonable though. Cause he was some of those, Brandon Graham in year 14 was taking over games like that Commanders game. It was unbelievable. Yeah. It was like he turned back the clock. Like he's playing better in year 14 than he played in year 1, 2, 3. It's amazing.
Well, when you're not asked to play 65% of the snaps, you're a lot fresher in games when you're playing 35 to 40% of the snaps. The Eagles had such a deep rotation of rushers that, they didn't have to overuse him, and that was their advantage, especially in the fourth quarter. They were playing tired offensive lines with fresher bodies rotating in and out, moving the pieces around a lot more. So that's why Brandon Graham felt like a kid in a candy store the entire season. His body wasn't as beat up. He was mentally sharper, physically sharper, and it bode well. And then when you look at the overall structure of the defense, you had a few players miss games here and there, but they had all 22 starters available for the Super Bowl. That's amazing. Unheard of. When you right. get through 19, 20 games to get to the Super Bowl, 17 regular season games, 2 or 3 playoff games, and to get to the Super Bowl with all 22 starters available, that's unheard of. So kudos to the Eagles coaching staff, training staff for being able to keep these guys up, and even guys that fell by the wayside, getting them back on the field at the most strategic point of a season. And, when I talked to Brandon Graham not too long ago, he goes, man, I feel good right now. A lot of times when you play 20 games, you get in the offseason, man, you want to take some time to heal up your body and your mind and just get away from football. Brandon Graham said, I feel really good right now considering how he was used. So that's, and now that he'll be 35 in April, and if he's playing the same kind of role that he played, I expect him to be feeling the same way when we come around to this point next year in 2024.
That's great. And then that just kind of sets your team up for success because, you like you said, you play those 20 games and then you through the next offseason, you may have a couple guys who you're trying to get back off an ACL, an Achilles, a plantar, a busted elbow, busted shoulder. Relatively, the Eagles lost that game on their feet. Yeah,
they did. Oh yeah. There's no awesome. And like Nick Sirianni said, I give Nick Sirianni a lot of credit. He said, we can complain about the playing surface all we want, but 2 teams had to play on that same surface. That's right. Plain and simple. And so he didn't complain about the surface being extra slippery and his pass rushers not being able to get proper footing to get after Patrick Mahomes enough because Kansas City's defense was able to get after Jalen Hurts. They didn't sack him a lot. Yeah, they didn't sack him, but they forced him out of the pocket a lot, forced him off his spot. So unfortunately, the surface was an issue. And when this Eagles defense that predicated itself on being able to get off the ball and making quarterbacks uncomfortable, that was not the case, with Mahomes. Hopefully they can get back there again and get that bad feeling out of their systems and finish what they weren't able to finish with that dominant team from this past season.
somebody who's not going to be around to harass quarterbacks in the Eagles uniform next season, Javon Hargrave. Do you think that this means that they, as Howie does, get a year out ahead of the potential free agency, and we can expect them to lean heavily into using Jordan Davis, or you think that Howie might have something else up his sleeve as well?
I never count Howie out on anything. Just when you think you figured him out, he pulls a wow factor out of his hat. I don't think they're going to go out and get a frontline DN. They're not going to pay big money for a D tackle. I mean, but I do think when the dust settles and they look at this roster, they could add another body like an Ndamukong Suh or Linval Joseph, some veteran they can get at a league close to a league minimum with incentives. But this is Jordan Davis's time to shine. Unfortunately, he lost significant playing time with a couple of injuries, but he has to go out and prove now why he was drafted one of the top 15 players in the draft last year. When you're a body that big and able to do some of the things that he's capable of doing, you've got to show up. Now, he played a little bit over 20% of the snaps last year. I expect that to double at least. He could be in the 40-plus percentile of the snaps, and he should be. He had his rookie year, he was in the perfect storm in his rookie year. He played behind two proven D tackles in Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, two highly decorated guys. He got to learn from two of the best in the business, and he didn't have the weight of having to beat a man in his first year. So now it's his time to take off. And so I expect great things from him in 23.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the same thing about Nakobe Dean? While you were talking about Jordan Davis, the amount of space he's able to eat up, and Nakobe Dean, you could say the same thing about him not being thrust in. He got some opportunities here and there, but there was no pressure on him. He got to ride all the way to the Super Bowl. So do you expect the same kind of thing for Nakobe Dean?
Yeah, when I look at Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, I call them red shirt freshmen.
Okay.
They basically had a chance to sit and watch. And Nakobe Dean's another one who slipped through the cracks, fell through the third round. A lot of people question whether his shoulder was right or not. But, he got in one game late last season, played 14, 15 snaps, and he had 5 tackles. So he showed that, when given a chance, he could be that guy that everybody expected him to be coming out of Georgia. He's another guy, Kazir White is now gone. TJ Edwards is now gone. So it's a natural progression to get him ready to play. How they will fit in Sean Desai's defense remains to be seen. But I expect those guys to step up. I give Howie Roseman a lot of credit for drafting guys not out of need, but for seeing the future in terms of not having to scramble and be in a dire straits to have to draft certain types of players coming into this draft. Now you already have players that are, 1 year into professional football. They know what it takes to get their bodies and minds right for a professional season, more so than a college season. And I expect those guys to truly step up and deliver for this team this season.
You spoke about Sean Desai a second ago. What are you thinking? What are you hearing that the differences in his scheme versus the scheme we were just watching the Eagles employ through 20 games?
Well, the one thing that's very similar to what Jonathan Gannon did was he doesn't blitz a lot. The 1 year he was a Bears defensive coordinator in Chicago, I mean, his defense was number 6 overall and number 3 against the pass. And that was the year Robert Quinn rose up and had 18 quarterback sacks, obviously, because Khalil Mack had moved on and gone to the Chargers. It's hard to tell exactly what you're going to see from his defense. I do know that he likes to run blitz a lot. Jonathan Gannon liked to run blitz. So in terms of overall scheme, I don't know. But I've said on my show, Sports Take, a number of times and other platforms, we won't know what a Sean Desai defense looks like in OTAs, training camp, even preseason games, because everything's going to be so vanilla. And I don't really think we're going to have a grasp of what we're looking at with him, at least through the first 3 or 4 games of next regular season, because teams hide stuff so well. So, Sean Desai walks into a great situation when you look at the wealth of talent they have in place, especially with the free agents they were able to bring back. So whatever he's going to do is a mystery to us because, when he was in Seattle, he was an assistant. So we only have 1 year's worth of work to evaluate what his defense looks like, which is not really fair to him. So I have to take I have to take a wait and see approach with him because it's going to be so vague up until they hit the ground running when it counts for real.
You bring up a great point about the free agents that the Eagles were able to sign, and just to cover those, especially on the defensive end, they include Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and Greedy Williams. Two of those three they are bringing back from last year's team, but they had every right to go and be on another team, and the Eagles were able to bring them back. What do you think about that quartet of corners? And do you think that there's still more to be, that they'll still potentially add through the draft there? Because a lot of people were talking about Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. They were talking about Witherspoon. Could we still see something like that?
Well, now that you bring in a Greedy Williams and throw in Avonte Maddox, and I think the Eagles have arguably the best quartet of cornerbacks in the National Football League now.
Oh, yeah.
So when you look at what they have in terms of cornerback depth, drafting a cornerback is not of the highest priority right now for this team. I do believe they will draft one. They only have 6 picks right now. They got no compensatory picks. And I don't think drafting a corner is now a high priority for this team. They could be looking in the trenches. This is an organization that likes to build its team from the inside out along the defensive and offensive lines. Please don't take another offensive lineman with that first pick. You need some in today's game. You need somebody who can get after the quarterback. And there's some good players on the board who could help you in that regard.
Yeah, because they'll need, you can't always count on the kind of health that the Eagles defensive line had last year. You have to go a couple games.
Right.
They did have to go a couple games without Josh Sweat.
Jordan Davis.
Yeah. You're going to have to, that's the name of the game. I totally agree with you there. I mean, to add a Christian Gonzalez as he has to play dime. Are you going to play base dime defense? I don't know if that kind of asset is going to need to be spent. Hopefully they can find a gem in the second or third. Howie always likes to fall back. So I would caution people who the Eagles is their favorite team to not expect a draft now that they've had, I would call, a successful free agency period. I would expect them not to draft at 10, but I don't know anything. Well,
they still have not re-signed CJ yet, and we don't know if they will because we know Sean Payton really likes him in Denver. So we don't know. Marcus Epps is now gone to the Raiders. So they do have a dire need to tighten up that safety spot as we look at it right now. So safety could be a priority for this team in the upcoming draft, and they do have some good safeties on the board coming out this year. This is a team, even if they lose Isaac Seumalo, the free agency, it's still one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. They have enough depth still there to plug anybody in at their right guard position and keep that train moving, So this is a team that continues to want to get younger as it prepares not just for the immediate future, but the long-term future, but they have the luxury of not being in a desperate situation of having to draft abundance of players for needs now because they are pretty solid across the board at other positions in terms of frontline players.
Absolutely. They picked up Rashad Penny as a running back. He's been explosive and amazing when he's been in, but he has had some injury concerns. Do you think that this is a sign that they're comfortable, rolling with Kenny Gainwell in extended action?
Yeah, I thought Gainwell really came on in the latter part of the season. You bring in a Rashad Penny, I mean, this kid's a former first-round draft pick, and he had a lot of potential. If you look at his career, he's averaged over 5 yards a carry. The problem has been, his injury factor. A couple of years ago, he had the ACL. Then he had a broken fibula or vice versa. He's only played like 15 games the last 2 seasons, but he averaged like 5.7 yards a carry last year before he got hurt with the broken fibula. He's a big back at 220 pounds, but he's also a back that can not only break tackles, but can run away from pursuers as well. If they can keep him on the field, I like, especially with the signing Boston Scott back for 1 more year, I like the trio of backs that they have. People were losing their minds when I said, I knew in January that the running back that they had, Miles Sanders, was not coming back. And I said in February, I said Kenny Gainwell could be elevated as the lead back. Well, a lead back in the Eagles system doesn't mean you're the feature back. It just
That's
means
right.
you might get more reps than the other guy, but it does, guy coming off the bench may get more carries than you. A lead
LeGarrette
back,
Blunt.
look at the Jay Ajayi, they got a rookie named Corey Clement. You look at the trio of backs they had last year. Miles Sanders was running for 100+ yards, carrying the ball 15, 17, 18 times a game. That's a lead back in the Eagles backfield. And, they don't like to overburden a running back. The only negative on Rashad is he doesn't catch the ball much. The Eagles like their backs to catch the ball out of the backfield. Kenny Gainwell catches the ball well. Boston Scott catches the ball well. We don't know how well, Rashad Penny catches the ball because we haven't seen it much. But
Absolutely.
if he's healthy, he will be a positive cog in that offense. But the operative word is if. You don't
Absolutely.
know. But I do think he has a capability of being a great asset in this Eagles backfield.
No question about it. I mean, when you look at the numbers, I mean, the guy is averaging about 7 yards a carry, in his last 10 games. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. That you're talking if you can stretch that together, you're talking kind of league MVP territory as a running back. I mean, I don't think Henry averaged 7 yards a carry in that year. That's ridiculous.
No, but kudos. But, kudos, when you look at the Eagles running numbers, kudos to the offensive line for blowing people off the ball and opening up holes.
Absolutely.
But let's call it what it is. They played an inferior schedule. It was like the big brother beating up on the little brothers all season long for the most part. And when you look at the opponents they played against, now the schedule coming up this season is a lot tougher against better teams, against better quarterbacks that they're going to face this year. So we're going to find out, was that season the Eagles had a fluke, especially now that Gannon is not here under Sean Desai, or was this team really that good? We're going to find that out real quick in 2023.
Like Bart Scott said, can't wait.
Can't wait. It's a good thing about football. When I first broke into business, once the season was over, it was over. But now, because the attention has been so magnified with free agency, and the draft, football is, 12 months out of the year now. So you got something to talk about, all year long when it comes to football to keep your juices flowing until you get to another season.
Absolutely. Are there any players we talked a little bit about the draft. Are there any players that kind of like just stick out to you as that you think could just be the best guy from this draft, or somebody who fits extraordinarily well with, the way the current Eagles roster is constructed?
Well, even with the wealth of edge rushers that they still have in Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, don't forget Derrick Barnett's coming back, Josh Sweat. I just love that kid, Jalen Carter, out of Georgia. I mean, you talk about a disruptive force at the D tackle position. My goodness, he had a dark cloud over his head, but if he's cleared of any past transgressions, I expect him to be one of the top 9 or 10 players taken. You figure the way the draft is playing itself out, now that Carolina's moved up to the 1 spot, there's going to be 3 or 4 quarterbacks that are going in the top 9 or 10, top 9 picks. Very minimum. 3, you have Carolina, Houston, and Indianapolis all looking for that future franchise quarterback. Even though Atlanta's going to go with the Kid Ritter, who's to say Atlanta may not look at a quarterback?
That's right.
Who's to say that, Vegas, may not look at a quarterback of the future, So he could fall right into the Eagles' lap. I love Will Anderson out of Alabama, edge rusher, another disruptive force. I love Witherspoon. People keep talking about Joey Porter, Gonzalez. My favorite is Witherspoon out of Illinois. In terms of being aggressive, playing man coverage, I love Witherspoon a little bit more than I do the other cornerbacks. And if you look at the safety, I like the kid Antonio Johnson, 6'2", 190 pounds, great in run support, can cover center field, good speed, good anticipation, good breaks on the ball. So there's a number of different ways they could go, but don't put it past Howie to get an offensive lineman. Look, hey, I'm just telling you, man.
How can you argue with the results? They got results.
I know, man. I know, but I mean, come on. You don't need another offensive lineman at number 10 in this draft. I'm being a little facetious, but if they did this, I'll just sit there going, "That's Howie being Howie, man."
Exactly. That's what we'll all say.
Some
guy we never heard of. That's another road grader.
Another road grader. Yeah, they're gonna plug in on the right side. I'm like, okay, Howie, you had other needs, but you went out and got this guy. Okay, all right. Who's to argue when you have, Jeff Stoutland, who's coaching your offensive lineman, the best in the business, you can't argue with the results, right? So
that's right. Last year, I really wanted them to go. I knew that's not the way that Howie runs business. He, of course, didn't do it. I was looking at the guy Kyle Hamilton that went to Baltimore, but he kind of looked lost in the sauce last year. So he kind of made me look silly because, I mean, do you think that was just like the rookie jitters and the speed catching up to him, or do you think Kyle Hamilton, really has to step his game up this year?
Well, he has to step his game up. Maybe he just didn't fit in the system they were playing. Maybe it took him a lot longer to fit in the system they're playing in Baltimore. I think the kid I shouldn't say kid, the young man has a lot of talent. It just didn't pan out immediately. But, it's too soon to give up on him. And I think a second year in the system, every player makes the transition from the college to the pros at a different pace. You look at Sauce Gardner going to the Jets. He's a rookie defensive player of the year. He's already looked at as a shutdown corner in his first year in the National Football League. That does not happen, in a rookie player's first year. He is the exception to every rule that you could imagine. And other players, they gradually progress and get better. Same thing with wide receivers and running backs. Few take off right away. Others gradually pick up steam and get a lot better and live up to that potential. And unfortunately, some just don't for whatever reason. Improperly used, improperly coached, wrong system, poor offensive line for running backs. A lot of intangibles go into it. But I do think Kyle has a chance to really flourish and to emerge as a top flight player at his position.
D Gunn, did you do a March Madness bracket this year, or you stayed out of it?
Heck no. After what happened in the first game with Furman upsetting Virginia, I learned my lesson a long time ago, man. That's why I call it March Madness. The tournament's barely a few minutes old, and Furman hadn't been in the tournament in 43 years.
That's right.
43 years they hadn't been in the tournament. They rise up and beat Virginia in the first game on a three-pointer. But that's what I love about the tournament, man. There's so many unpredictable moments in those games, and you don't even have to be a fan of the team. You're just a fan of the sport in the moment.
Exactly.
To say you watched it, and that's why I say, you know what? Anytime I put together a bracket, by the time it gets down to the Final Four, I'm like, well, I can toss this out. This ain't happening, so I just stopped doing it, man. Just sit back and enjoy the games.
I was researching this yesterday because I thought I actually thought that there were a couple of instances of people having perfect brackets. There's in fact never been a documented case of somebody having a perfect bracket. Can you believe that?
Exactly. And you know what? You look at the teams that are considered at the top. You have Alabama and Houston. There's not a dominant top seed. Every top seed can be beaten in this tournament. I mean, Alabama they can shoot the lights out, no question. But you live by the long ball, you die by the long ball, and they've lost their share of games this year. Houston is a very athletic team, a tenacious team, but they're not a very big team. So I think if you catch them, if the right team catches them, a fundamentally sound team like a Duke catches them at the right time, there's going to be a lot of upsets in this tournament.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So far, timestamp this before day 2 is going. I'm 12 out of 16. We're right, but this year, D Gunn, I didn't do the whole thing that I do every year where I sit down and I go with research and look at all the strength of schedule and all. I was like, you know what? Everybody is just better off just going off of vibes. Just sit down and write the name. If you're gonna do it, just go and write some names on the thing and have fun with it.
or what you do is you keep a pencil handy. Don't do your brackets in ink. Do it with a pencil. So as the tournament unfolds, you can erase here and there and start moving your teams. Yeah, see, make yourself look good. See, that's what you do. That's how you get over that. I'm not endorsing cheating, but I'm just saying.
It's not cheating if there's a racer.
Or you get caught. If you don't get caught, is it cheating?
That's the Patriot way.
Exactly, man.
D Gunn. So we can catch you daily on JAKIB Sports at 12 with Rob Ellis and Barrett. Is that Sports Take time?
Yeah, Sports Take 12 to 3 Monday through Friday. Rob Ellis, Barrett Brooks, and myself. We have great guests on daily, And like you said earlier, the thing I love about the show is all three of us worked together for a long time at NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just natural chemistry between us. And we have a show meeting every day at 11 o'clock for like 10, 15 minutes. And I would tell you this, a lot of things that we talk about being scripted, it falls by the wayside because we go in different tangents. And that's what people love. People tell me, man, we love hearing your personal stories, and how you guys are just like one of us, and each and every day the numbers continue to grow. And even after the show's live, the viewerships are incredible. People go back and look at the shows at their own leisure and stuff like that. So it's exactly what I thought it would be. It's organic chemistry at its finest.
Absolutely.
And you got three class clowns just going at it every day.
It's awesome. Y'all go watch it. You'll have a good time with it. It's topical. You'll get news, and you got people who actually know what the hell they're talking about. So, D Gunn, is an honor as always. Learning from you and have you on the show. I will reach out again, but thank you all so much for listening. You can follow the show at MentionPod, MENTIONPOD on Twitter, and then
get it right now. Get it right.
Yeah. And then on Instagram, it's honorable mention _podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. See you soon.